workers, COVID-19 response team, laboratory network, policemen, petrol station attendants, journalists, and strategic leaders, followed by the general public who are willing to get vaccinated. Those who already got their first jabs shared their experiences with NTA crew.
So I think the notion that Nigerians don't want to take the vaccine is really not there. It's neither here nor there, because you have a very long queue. But again, the staffs, the people handling it are really very professional, I must say. They treat people with respect, and they also expedite action. I mean, I just came in about an hour ago and queued up. Eventually it was my turn, and I took the vaccine. Actually, I was asking the lady, are you sure you've done anything? Because you don't feel any pain.
I think within 5 minutes, they've answered me. No queue. Even when the network is not going, they did it by themselves. Go to their website and do it. It's perfect. They are doing something tangible. It's a good experience.
I was actually scared at first. A lot of people don't want to do the vaccine stuff, but I did it. It was good. No side effect, no pain. It was okay. And up to now, I'm still fine. Nothing is wrong.
Fresh from the cooler. There was no pain. Her hand was very gentle. When the injection was going in, I didn't even feel anything. It was a very good experience, I must say. I was a bit scared when I was coming, but I mean, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a simple injection that will save my life and the life of my family. So I thank the government for doing this.
They also called on other Nigerians to ignore every negative rumor about the vaccine and get vaccinated.
Oh, definitely, I will encourage everybody that is able to come to Wuse General Hospital and take the vaccination. It didn't take me up to 5 minutes. Taking the vaccination will prevent you from getting COVID, and it will give you the immunity that you need that will help you and your family. And then also, we should not forget that even though we've taken the vaccination, we should still continue to wash our hands, wear masks. I'm wearing 2 masks because I'm in public, and continue to social distance.
I want to encourage Nigerians, to make it a point of duty, to register both online. If you cannot register online, you go to the center, make yourself available, take the vaccine. This story of this vaccine being one killer of some sort or the other is a fluke. It's not. It's a very funny story. It's not real. I mean, I've taken picture of what happened. I will share it on Facebook. I will let my friends know, and I will encourage all Nigerians to go ahead and take the vaccine. It's good for us.
I think people should actually go out and do take the vaccine. It's very, very good.
Vaccine is okay. I didn't feel anything, So I encourage everyone, both foreigners and local, to take the vaccine. It's good, for your health. I mean, to prevent COVID, from having COVID. Not really prevent. I mean, it lessens the fatality.
A frontline health worker, otherwise known as one of the generals of COVID-19, who happens to be the second person to take the first jab of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine in Nigeria, and has also been involved in the treatment of some COVID-19 patients, Dr. Yunusa Tairo and Halima Sadiq, a COVID-19 vaccinator at Wuse General Hospital in Abuja, say, contrary to the notion that most Nigerians are not ready to take the vaccine, Abuja residents have been trooping in and out of hospital to take the vaccine on a daily basis.
Of course, we need to actually come out and be in the front liner. We call them the frontliners. And being the frontliners, at least being one of the frontliners and one of those actively frontlining, I think it's also good for us to actually come forward, actually to take the vaccine, to boost confidence, and also to make it a reality. Because when people see you, just like what happened when the virus came to Nigeria, a lot of people just say they don't believe, or some people said, no, if you come in contact with the person, you may die, or things like that. But some of us just took it as a part of our knowledge and not doing all those necessary protocols that are expected. And then we went in there, and then people saw that we didn't die in the rest. And a lot of people now started getting confident to know that, okay, you can actually use your non-pharmacological protocols to prevent against that. And even some people have done that, and I think it should be successful. And I think those are the three things that actually gave us gave me as a person a confidence to actually be among the first group of Nigerians to take the vaccine.
I've observed is that people are really coming out for this vaccine. Seriously, more than we even expected. Nobody has ever took the injection since we started that come back for any complaint. We never receive any challenge that maybe this is wrong or nothing is happening to me. Nobody has ever come for any effect, any advice effect. Nobody.
They added that taking the vaccine should not, however, prevent Nigerians from observing the non-pharmaceutical safety protocol.
I believe that this is just the early time. This is the early period of this vaccine. We will take the first dose. You know, most of us in the country has actually had the first jab, including myself, being among the first group that had that. And we are waiting for the second jab. We don't think that, you know, they always say that the first jab does not confine that immunity. You have about 60% to 70% of immunity. But we know that there are some other people too that are within the other side, that you have almost about 40% still left that doesn't confine in it. That's one. Number two, also looking at the immunological process of vaccine. If it's not when you take the vaccine there that it starts protecting you. Of course, the vaccine has to come into the body. It has to perform a lot of function. It has to secrete a lot of antibodies, mucosal antibodies, which will be transported to some linings of the nose, the mouth, oral, nasal, pharyngeal area. And then you now see those places will now be covered. Then you can now say that, okay, you are covered. Even after we have done that, you must also realize that you don't want the load of the antigen or the virus to be more than what we call your immunological process. Therefore, it is still good and it is nice and a very good assertion for us as we are today to continue with our non-pharmacological protocols, i.e. putting on our face masks, washing our hands and using our hand sanitizers, and also avoiding social gathering in most, and obeying those COVID-19, what the Presidential Task Force has beautifully presented to us so that we can reduce the burden of COVID-19 transmission. So I don't really believe, I don't believe in your assertion. I believe vaccine is also one of the amendments that we are going to use to actually bring this virus to the BRS non-infective minimal stage.
After taking it, you need to continue wearing your face masks and still sanitize your hand as we've been doing, and still observe your social distance. Yeah.
Worthy of note is the fact that refusal to get the COVID-19 vaccination is not a crime, but to mislead Nigerians into not taking the vaccine is punishable.
If you don't want to take it, just keep quiet, don't take it. But if you go about spreading and saying people should not take it, we'll arrest you. It's against the law.
I stand today as an advocate of vaccine, telling you that it is safe, go for it, and you will never regret it.
Meanwhile, the federal government has expressed confidence that they will meet the target of vaccinating 70% of the eligible population within the first year, and by the second year, vaccinate the remaining 30%.
Now, Abdulsalam Jibril is looking at the rate of infection. Are people still getting infected with COVID-19 as before? What about the number of recovered and discharged patients and deaths? Is there still cause for alarm? He will get all the answers from the NCDC. And of course, Abdulsalam, you know, he will also give us an update of the ongoing vaccination process.
All over the world, COVID-19 has led to a dramatic loss of human life and presents an unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and the workforce. Data from Johns Hopkins University reveals that the number of people who have died from COVID-19 has surpassed 3 million, with over 145 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 worldwide. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, many countries have taken measures to stem the spread of the virus. That includes total and partial lockdown measures, social distancing, face masks, and hand-washing hygiene, among others. While there is no officially recognized cure for the virus, the development of vaccines has become crucial for getting the pandemic under control.
Well, as a matter of fact, it is very interesting, and we are very, very happy with the development of vaccine against COVID-19. As you know that COVID-19 is a novel virus that came and started destroying the world. I mean, it was a scourge, a pandemic. I can imagine the number of persons that have died of COVID-19 in the world within 1 year. You know, so we are happy because before now there was no cure at all. I mean, everybody were trying different things, and a lot of people died from it. But right now with the vaccine, there is now light at the end of the tunnel that people can get COVID-19 and it's not going to be serious and they may not die from it. So we are very happy, and we're encouraging Nigerians, frontline workers particularly, people who are at risk, to quickly, as soon as possible, take the vaccination.
Nigeria has been adopting measures since the country recorded its first case of COVID-19 on 27 February 2020, when an Italian citizen in Lagos State tested positive for the virus. Since then, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, which is saddled with a mandate to lead the preparedness, detection, and response to infectious disease outbreaks and public health emergencies, has been providing scientific evidence and data to guide decisions by the Presidential Task Force. As at 21st April 2021, data from NCDC shows that Nigeria has recorded over 164,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, treating and discharging over 154,000 cases, and recording about 2,061 deaths since the first confirmed case in the country last year. Recently, the country has been recording a decrease in daily COVID-19 infections and deaths, as well as a situation where the number of those treated and discharged exceeds the number of positive cases detected. Data from NCDC shows that since February this year, the country has recorded a steady decrease in the number of confirmed cases when compared to week 1 in January 2021, that is from 4th to 10th February, where the number of new confirmed cases increased to 9,940 from 5,733 cases in week 53 in December. These were reported in 34 states and the FCT. In week 5, that is from 1st to 7th February 2021, the number of new COVID-19 cases decreased to 8,506 from 9,676 reported in week 4. These were reported in 35 states and the FCT. In week 6, the number of new confirmed cases decreased to 6,606 from 8,506 reported in week 5. In week 7, the number of new confirmed cases decreased to 5,720 from 6,606 reported in week 6. In week 8, the number of new confirmed cases also decreased to 3,583 from 5,720 reported in week 7. As at week 14, the number of new confirmed cases decreased to 598 from 602 reported in week 13. These were reported in 26 states and the FCT.
You do not expect the level of morbidity maybe some 9 months ago, some 8 months ago to be the same now, because a lot more is now known about COVID-19, you know, in the sense that there are drugs that were developed, you know, which we have used. There are also some drugs which are still in trial, and now the vaccine has come. And, you know, the vaccine is also seen as an antigen neutralizer, more or less. It can also be like treatment, even in treatment form. And majority, quite a lot of times, the healthcare workers who are at risk are also the people who transmit it, but quite a lot of them are also taking the vaccine, you know, and not just that, also herd immunity is gradually being developed. So it's a great relief that gradually the numbers are coming down. the deaths are coming down and the morbidity is coming down.
In March this year, the country received nearly 4 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from COVAX and subsequently began its vaccination program, prioritizing those at higher risks of complications, such as the elderly, and those at high risks of exposure and transmission, such as healthcare workers. Since then, over 1.2 million Nigerians have been vaccinated. That includes the President, Vice President, governors, ministers, and other government officials, among others. However, many remain adamant and quite skeptical about receiving the vaccine, especially with different theories around it. While reacting to this, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency emphasized that the batch of AstraZeneca vaccine brought into the country are safe for use. Hence, Nigerians should remain calm, as being vaccinated is a good step towards ridding the virus of the country. President Muhammadu Buhari has also weighed in, allaying the fears and concern about the vaccines.
The vaccine offers hope for a safe country free of coronavirus. I urge all state governments, traditional and religious leaders to take the lead in the mobilization effort within their environment and spheres of influence. I similarly urge all eligible Nigerians to present themselves and be vaccinated in accordance with the order of priority already mapped out at the various authorized designated centers only.
So as of the last count, we've vaccinated up to 1.2 million Nigerians, and that, of course, is a number that is growing, quite, progressively. We anticipate that we will vaccinate up to 2 million Nigerians with the first doses, and then we'll get another the same 2 million Nigerians after that interval of 8 to 12 weeks. We'll now vaccinate them with their second doses. In terms of the challenges that we faced, of course, it started off with people who were over-enthusiastic, so they went to some of the health facilities. That led to some queues. We didn't want to have any queues at all, especially in urban areas such as Lagos. That is what we experienced. But we also experienced some glitches in the online registration. Of course, this is a technology that a lot of people who are in the front lines are not used to. So simple tasks such as linking the QR codes, the unique QR codes with data, that was a little bit of a challenge because a lot of the health workers and the recorders were not familiar with that. Again, we've had to institute multiple trainings to build their capacities. Like we recognize, this is the first phase. This is the beginning. This is a process of vaccination that will take up to 2 years. So we anticipated that in the first phase we'll have some of these issues with technology. And actually, we anticipated even more challenges with the technology, but we are very happy that it's not as bad as we anticipated it will be, and we expect that, like we've already started saying, that the states are now getting accustomed to the platform. When you compare the rates of vaccination in Nigeria with other African countries, we are heads and shoulders beyond what other countries have done. Again, this is because of the experience that we've had with the polio eradication. So we have that experience, that technological know-how, the operational know-how to deploy human resources, financial and materials to the front line. For this particular phase, we focused on the health workers, frontline workers, strategic leaders. As you can imagine, all of this cut across different parts of the country. So we've not started going to the last mile, which is going to each and every community. That will come in subsequent phases. That is why it might appear as if we're actually focusing on the urban areas, because as you are aware, most of the frontline health workers in the treatment centers are based in the urban centers, right? So that is where we've started with those people who are in the front line of providing care to people who are sick from COVID-19. So those are the areas we started, our other frontline health workers and the strategic leaders.
As countries around the world continue to prioritize COVID-19 vaccines for its population, the World Health Organization has warned against vaccine nationalism, urging the availability of the vaccines for everyone. Even before many of the now approved COVID-19 vaccinations had completed their clinical trials, wealthy countries such as Britain, the United States, Japan, and the European bloc had procured several million doses of the ones that seemed the most promising.
Going forward, I want to see manufacturers prioritize supply and roll out through COVAX. I urge countries that have contracted more vaccines than they will need and are controlling the global supply to also donate and release them to COVAX immediately, which is ready today to roll out them out quickly.
While hopes for a return to normalcy are riding high on COVID-19 vaccines, some health experts maintain that a vaccine is not a silver bullet. They stress that safe and effective vaccines will be a game changer, and Nigerians for the foreseeable future must continue wearing masks, physically distancing, and avoiding large crowds.
That's it on 30 Minutes today. Just before we go, remember, based on what is known about vaccines for other diseases and early data from the clinical trials, experts believe that getting a COVID-19 vaccine also helps keep anyone from getting seriously ill, even if you do get COVID-19. Getting vaccinated yourself may also protect people around you. Take that step now and get vaccinated. I can testify it is safe. Bye for now.
We are a nation of believers, a beautiful country steeped in rich tradition and colorful culture. Come and explore our diverse and breathtaking landscapes, cascading waterfalls, and exciting cities. Discover, learn, and enjoy our amazing heritage. Delight your palate with our delicious range of foods. Relax and be entertained by the biggest and best of music, arts, and films in Africa. We are beautiful. We are amazing. We are Africa's hidden gem, the heartbeat of Africa. We are Nigeria. Tour Nigeria and see tomorrow. Lagos, the center of excellence. A tropical city surrounded by the turquoise Atlantic Ocean, a bounty of natural beauty with miles of pristine beaches, rich culture, and amazing people. Come and enjoy what Africa's fastest growing city has to offer. Explore a city with fantastic historical past and an even brighter future. Today is only the beginning. So much lies ahead. See tomorrow. One Lagos.
Information is power. Everyone wants power. So feel powerful with the NTA News mobile app, the one-stop information center. Real news at your fingertip. Be the first to report by uploading first-hand information on the You Report link, and be the first to know by simply clicking on any of the links on the sidebar for headlines, domestic and foreign news, economy, security, politics, sports, and more. Stream live on your smartphone and tablets and stay connected. It's pretty easy. Simply download NTA News app from your Google Play Store and you're good to go. NTA News mobile app, your access to real-time information.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online.
Towards addressing critical national issues, President Buhari engages select state governors.
Recall that many of the states have common features of insecurity that we have within our state. We felt that we must also meet Mr. President about it. It's about the insecurity.
Contentious issues with labor unions analyzed as President Buhari meets with Minister of Labor and Employment.
Working now to make the health workers feel that their efforts are appreciated by government.
National Economic Council backs CBN and Finance Ministry on 60 billion naira printing allegation.
The minister and the CBN governor stated categorically to the council that the allegation of the printing of money to augment allocation is outrightly false.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss financing Safe School Initiative.
The Safe Schools Initiative was launched on May 7, 2014 to help protect hundreds of schools and students in Nigeria in response to the growing number of attacks on educational facilities in the country.
Of course, Kirian, the launch of the Safe Schools Initiative came on the heels of the abduction of 276 female students from their secondary school in Chibok in Borno State. It was an incident that was not only strange to many Nigerians at the time, but also left many amazed as to how the schoolgirls were transported across several kilometers, traversing villages and towns without being intercepted at any point by security operatives. Now, the Chibok abduction, as it were, marked the beginning of what has now become serial attacks on education and educational facilities in different parts of the country, but most especially in the north.
In fact, Kingsley, between the time of the Chibok girls' abduction in 2014 and today, we are beginning to lose count of attacks on educational facilities and abduction of students by bandits and terrorists who now regard schools and students as the soft targets for their nefarious activities, which is characterized by kidnap for ransom. Experts already consider the trend dangerous for a country with the highest rate of out-of-school children, according to UNICEF statistics, which indicates that 1 in every 5 children in Nigeria is out of school.
Absolutely right, Kirian, and out-of-school children are also vulnerable to exploitation and abuse and are usually not equipped with the requisite knowledge and skills to positively contribute to the economy and society. Experts predict that if the trend of school abductions continues, then the worst-case scenario might be that half of young persons would not necessarily have the skills for entry-level employment.
Absolutely. And in fact, international projections also indicate that children missing out on 5 months of education would collectively result in about $10 trillion in lost future incomes. Little wonder the Safe Schools Initiative was launched to protect the rights of children to learn in a safe environment.
Now, the report on the Safe Schools Initiative spells out global best practices, which highlight basic security actions or steps to be taken at both the school and community levels to safeguard education, with emphasis on special provisions for schools in high-risk areas. Now, 7 years after its launch, the spread of attacks on schools shows that the Safe Schools Initiative is yet to find its footing in terms of implementation.
Exactly, because Nigerians have not seen anything practical, in terms of providing security for schools, especially those that are, of course, located in the outskirts of communities and towns. And apparently, the initiative that border on securing schools will require huge financing, and that appears to be the missing link. Hence, the present administration is shifting focus on financing the Safe Schools Initiative.
And by the way, Kirian, experts also note that the combination of attacks on students and educational facilities, particularly in the northeastern region, coupled with the force majeure brought about by the COVID-19 crisis, means an urgent multidimensional approach is needed to financing the Safe Schools Initiative.
Now, how can we guarantee safe schools and communities for learning? What strategies should be taken to facilitate safe schools, safe education, and sustainable future for Nigerians' next generation? These are some of the questions begging for answers as we discuss financing Safe Schools Initiative and the program. Welcome to another Friday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I am Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program. Good Morning Nigeria is broadcast live from our headquarters studios here in Abuja. Our complimentary segments, business, newspaper review and others will come up in the course of the program. But not before the highlights of the morning news with our colleague Dennis Adegunloye. Morning, Dennis.
Yes, good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria. And we will begin with security matters in furtherance of his strategic engagement with stakeholders towards addressing critical national issues. President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday engaged governors from the north central and northwestern parts of the country with challenges of security dominating discussions.
Many of the states have common features of insecurity that we have within our sets. And we felt that we must also meet Mr. President about it. It's about the insecurity.
What are the takeaways?
The takeaway will say that the meeting with the President was very fruitful, and we are also very committed, and we have seen a lot of commitments, so we are waiting for the implementation. And Mr. President has given us that assurance.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the latest killings of several people by bandits in Zamfara State, warning that such wanton disregard for life will be brought to an end sooner rather than later. In his reaction to the incidents, the president said such insane and persistent violence against innocent people must stop. He advised the criminal elements to resist the temptation of pushing their luck too far by believing that the government lacks the capacity to crush them. He directed the military, security and intelligence agencies to take immediate steps to close all existing gaps in their operations being exploited by criminals to wreak havoc, and expressed hope that the special operation launched by the military at 3 a.m. Thursday morning from Maru local government area will prove decisive in ridding the state of the frequent and horrifying bandit activities. President Buhari warned that the violence against poor villages who are struggling with poverty and other severe economic challenges is not going to be tolerated by this administration. He reassured the people of Zamfara State that despite the latest setback in efforts at protecting citizens, there will be no compromise in the renewed determination to defeat these enemies of humanity. And the Minister of Defense, Bashir Magashi, says the casualties being continuously suffered in the battle to secure Nigeria, notwithstanding, the nation's armed forces will neither be deterred nor abdicate their responsibility of protecting lives and defending the territorial integrity of the country. The minister gave the assurance at the State House media briefing on national security organized by the Presidential Communications Team.
The military is not taking kindly of that. Let me just tell you this. Whoever touches the military has no regard for this country. We are on the hunt for the killers of these soldiers.
Away from security, determined to find lasting solutions to the spate of industrial actions bedeviling the nation's public sector, President Muhammadu Buhari has held a strategic meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. Speaking to journalists after the meeting held behind closed doors, the minister said all contentious issues with the labour unions were analysed.
Working now to make the health workers feel that their efforts are appreciated by government. So I have briefed him on that and briefed him also on, we have some fallouts from the ASU discussion and the agreements reached the memorandum of action so that we can meet up the timelines for certain things promised. Example, the revitalization fund.
The presidency has reacted to an ongoing campaign for the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Isa Ali Pantami, to resign. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, notes that the minister has rightly apologized for what he said in the early 2000s and now leads the charge against illegal data deductions and pricing. The statement adds that Dr. Pantami has revolutionized the government's virtual public engagement to respond to COVID-19 and save taxpayers' money, while establishing ICT startup centers to boost youth entrepreneurship and create jobs. Garba Shehu added that the administration therefore stands behind the minister and all Nigerian citizens to ensure they receive fair treatment, fair prices, and fair protection in ICT services. The National Economic Council affirms the position of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Finance Ministry that no money was printed to augment the federal allocation to states in March this year. At its virtual meeting, which held on Thursday, the council says it was impressed with the progress so far on the railway projects, noting that it will continue to work with the federal government for rapid completion of the projects.
This meeting revealed the controversy and heard from the Finance Minister, the Nigerian Governors Forum as represented by the Ekiti State Governor and the CBN Governor. Both the Minister and the CBN Governor stated categorically to the Council that the allegation of the printing of money to augment allocation is outrightly false. The NGF also supported the conclusion, and NEC affirmed same as the highest constitutional body tasked with economic affairs in the country.
And the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has confirmed 100 new cases of COVID-19 in the country. In the latest figures released by the center, Taraba records 64 new infections, Lagos 21, the FCT 4, and Rivers 3. Others recording new cases are Akwa Ibom, Kaduna, and Oyo states, recording 2 each, while Nasarawa and Bauchi complete the day's tally with a single case each. Nigeria now has 164,588 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 154,578 have been treated and discharged. The death toll is 2,061. Well, that concludes the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria will continue with Kingsley and Kieran after this break. Good morning.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
Dear customer, link your Airtel number to your national identification number today. Here are easy ways you can do it. Dial *121*1# on your Airtel line and follow the prompts on the screen. Type in your 11-digit government-approved NIN number. You will receive a confirmation message to confirm your entry. You can also visit www.airtel.com.ng/NIN to link your phone number to your NIN. If you do not know your NIN, simply dial *346# to get it. No stress, no wahala.
Airtel, the smartphone network. When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. It's great value. It protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems, which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
Contemporary times require practical skills to remain competitive and relevant in your organization. Therefore, take advantage of NTA TV College short proficiency courses to sharpen your professional skills. Basic Broadcast Accounting and Auditing. Date 19th April to 30th April 2021. 2 weeks. Audio Engineering, Operations and Maintenance. Date 19th April to 23rd April 2021. 1 week. Protocol, Event Management and Public Relations. Date 3rd May to 14th May 2021. 2 weeks. Intermediate Camera Operation Techniques. Date 17th May to 11th June 2021. 4 weeks. The course fee for the 4-week course is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for the 2-week course is 80,000 naira, while the course fee for the 1-week course is 40,000 naira only. Accommodation inclusive. Venue for all the courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament. Revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Liverpool are still in the hunt for a top 4 finish as they welcome Newcastle United to Anfield. Will their ambitions be foiled by the visitors? This Saturday, it's Liverpool versus Newcastle United on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 12 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news. Let's listen into a report by our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
As the COVID-19 pandemic has continued to test African countries on multiple fronts, from health to economic devastation and low demand for crude, as well as sharp fall of oil prices. Despite the gradual relaxation of lockdown order across the globe, COVID-19 has forced major companies and businesses around the globe to rely basically on technology to function, whether they're using it to hold virtual meetings or monitoring vital assets. This technological solution is believed to help sustain businesses as well as develop ways to make a comeback after the pandemic.
The interactions with customers that would usually, help you to make more funds, is no longer there. And we have been forced to now adjust and move into, virtual communications with our customers. And that alone, has been a very great challenge. We also find out that because these customers are also trying to adjust, you are not getting the kind of patronage that you usually should get. And then the logistics, it's also becoming a challenge. It's also becoming a problem, because you don't move the way you used to move.
With that, financial experts suggest that African countries should develop fair, balanced local content policies that create economic and educational opportunities for Africans in order not to discourage foreign investors from operating in the region.
All right, many thanks, Comfort, for that business package. And next on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review segment.
Newspaper reviewer Baya Chebe is with us in the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kieran.
Yeah, Baya, good to see you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kieran.
Yeah, okay. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper above the nameplate. Financial institutions will fund 1.8 trillion naira COVID-19 stimulus package. That's according to the federal government. It's on page 21. Presidency battles to save Pantami. Reps plan debate. It's on page 26. Nigeria fears arms influx over Idris Debi's death. Oyo suspected butchers, herdsmen abduct 5 travelers, demand 50 million naira. It's on page 2. All right. Below the nameplates, we have the lead story this morning. States cash crunch. That's the kicker. Governors beg federal government to postpone $2.1 billion support repayment. CBN kicks. It has 2 riders to that. NEC falls Obaseki, says 60 billion naira not printed to shore up March allocation. Minister fixes May date. CBN explains technical challenges in further shift. The story can be found on page 22 of the Punch newspaper. Now, the photo story there is that of Udumaki, who passed on. But the Amila, Sanwo-Olu, Adebayo, others extol Udumaki's virtues. The story is on page 26. NUT falls Adamawa screening declaring 2,000 members ghost teachers. It's on page 9. NLC plans 5-day strike over Kaduna workers sacking. It's also on page 9. And on page 13 is this one. Masop rejects UK asylum offer, says it's a ploy to stop Biafra. Nigeria desperately needs investments to recover, says NESG. It's on page 24. Aggrieved pregnant lady sets lover's room ablaze in Benue. That's on page 5. We also had, perhaps not on this paper, that one lover also poisoned herself and her boyfriend. I don't know how that is true. It's on social media. But I'm wondering what's happening in Benue State. Aggrieved pregnant lady sets lover's room ablaze in Benue. That's on page 5. Jason adamant as the CJN backs judiciary workers' strike. That's on page 8.
All right, Kieran, let's also take a look at the window page of the Nation newspaper. Above the name flag, take some of the headlines. How 500 billion naira COVID-19 fund was spent. How 500 billion naira COVID-19 fund was spent, with a rider 1.8 trillion naira from private sector. Details can be found on page 6. Katsina recruits more doctors to battle bird flu. And CJN, that's Chief Justice of Nigeria, justifies Juson's strike over autonomy. That story you find on page 3. Now, below the name flag, workers sack. Labour plans service withdrawal in Kaduna. That's page 28. NEC, that's the National Economic Council, dismisses Obasaki's 60 billion naira printing claim, and consensus on state police likely. That's the rider to that headline. Nigerians exceed IMF's 30% dollar deposits threshold. And this story comes with a double-decker headline: Governors take banditry and killings concern to Buhari. And you can see the governor, some of the governors there at the meeting with President Buhari. That's the photograph there. One of the governors crouching there is Malam El-Rufai of Kaduna. I was asking Bayo, this is not Dobale. Dobale is to prostrate fully. Yes. So I want to know how you describe this.
This is crouching.
Crouching, yeah. Crouching is an English word.
Yes,
but Dobale is not an English word.
Yes, certainly. And don't forget that there are several Nigerian words that have found themselves their way into the English language. But call them Nigerian English.
Not Dobala.
This one is a crouching in respect to the president.
That's right. And the president, of course, acknowledges that with his return greetings. Now, there are a number of riders to that lead headline. President orders special military operation. 53 bodies recovered in Zamfara community. Traditional ruler and 3 others killed in Benue. That's another sad story. And 2 nurses abducted from Kaduna Hospital. And then lastly, at the foot of the front page, you have 2 headlines. Why there is unstable power supply in Kano, page 28. On the same page, Mark, that's David Mark, urges Otom on security. And by the way, Mark is urging Otom to proceed, of course, with further securing Benue. The governor is 60 years today. Yes. All right.
Let's start with the human interest. Karl Udumaki, not many know that he is just 55 years old. In fact, he is survived by his father, Pa Ezekiel Abuye Udumaki, who is at the last birthday was 115 years old. The mother too is alive. She is Alice Ujolakwe Udumaki. She is 92 years old. Well, talking about insecurity now, President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the latest killing in Zamfara State, warning bandits to stop pushing their luck too far. The president said the insane and persistent violence against innocent people must stop. He ordered the military, security, and intelligence agencies to take immediate steps to close all existing gaps in their operations, which is being exploited by the criminals. In fact, he indicated that a special operation has been launched at 3 a.m. Thursday, and it will get rid of all the criminals in Maru local government area of Zamfara State. Meanwhile, armed bandits on Wednesday attacked a general hospital in Idon in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State and abducted 2 nurses. The hospital runs a 24 hours secondary health service facility and serves about 11 communities in that area. In another development, suspected armed bandits have laid siege on 7 communities in Magami district in Gusau local government of Zamfara State. Daily Trust reports that 45 persons were killed and dozens abducted by the bandits. This is why the president has now, after the meetings of the governors with him, gave the instructions to the special operations that it was launched 3 a.m. in Zamfara. Meanwhile, Zamfara State has had to close 4 markets, 2 of them in Gusau, Magami and Wanki Market in Gusau, Dansadao Market in Maru, and Dauram Market in Zaburu local government area. And the issue of the presidency has reacted to comments and propositions that the Minister of Communication and Digital are going to be over-campaign against him on his past comment in support of Taliban and Al-Qaeda. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Publicity says that the presidency agrees to Dr. Issa Pantami's explanation that he was young when he made the statement and his position have since changed. The minister recently renounced his views on Al-Qaeda and Taliban made in the year 2001, saying the views were made out of immaturity. Meanwhile, the presidency says those campaigners who are seeking to make leaders, political leaders, religious leaders, and civil society leaders in the present accountable for their past comment, no matter how long ago, and even if they are rejected, is just an insidious phenomenon to seek to cancel the career of persons in the present. And the statement also added those statements are manufactured deliberately to tarnish the reputation of the Senate because of the concerns that has been raised, especially by those who are operating in the telecom industry. He indicated that there are statements indicating that the presidency is now investigating newspaper editors alleged to be financially induced to run several campaigns against the Honourable Minister of the Communication and Digital Economy. He says that some have courageously rebuffed the overtures, but the police and the judiciary will be called to action when the investigations in those aspects are concluded. The National Parent-Teacher Association of Nigeria, NATPAN, has called on the federal and Kaduna state government to please secure the release of remaining students of the Federal Forestry and Mechanization in Kaduna. You recall that 39 of them were abducted just on the eve of 11th of March it was, and 10 of them have been released. We still have 29 of them unaccounted for. The president of NATPAN, Haruna Danjuma, also called on traditional and community leaders, as well as youth associations across the nation, to join hands with security operatives to ensure that all schools are safe. They advised that government should relocate schools in the rural areas to the urban areas to prevent all such incursions. Meanwhile, lest we forget COVID-19, we still had 100 cases yesterday in 8 states. Zamfara shot into the lead with 64, beating Lagos that had 21 to second position. All the others had single units. So far, our total case number is 164,588. Unfortunately, we have lost 2,061 of our competitors. Presently, we have 7,949 of our competitors who are undergoing treatment.
But before we go, like this issue, I would like us to talk about Nigeria fears arms influx over Idris Deby's death.
Yes. One of the areas for which illegal arms, have found their way through Nigeria are from Mali, Libya, and the routes are through Niger and Chad, and because of the conflict in that sub-region. And Idris Deby had been seen as a kingpin who was actually stemming and eliminating the influx of those arms. You recall, it was he who proposed that President Muhammadu Buhari be made the chairman of the Continental Security Outfit to challenge terrorism and all this. And he too has been the kingpin, and the fear is that with his demise, the criminals are going to have failed this and in having. You also recall that in Zamfara, I think, and in Sokoto, 2 persons have been arrested as couriers of arms, and their source of arms were found to be through Niger and Chad from Libya.
Well, that was the subject matter for our conversation yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, checking the influx of small arms and light weapons into Nigeria. The key thing with respect to Chad is to ensure that the country is stable, because right now the son who has been tapped to take over from Idris Deby is being opposed by various rival claimants, including, of course, the rebels. So if Chad remains unstable, then we can continue to entertain the fears that we're entertaining, which means we also need to fortify that axis. Happily, the Chief of Defense Staff, as we have indicated, that's General Lucky Rabo, was commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force based in N'Djamena.
From all indications, the instability, in Chad is expected, because when Deby died, his son was quickly appointed as the leader of the country, and perhaps all the democratic institutions, they were dismantled, right? So it called for opposition, as a matter of fact. And again, like you said, Chad has always been unstable in terms of infighting,
for decades
among themselves.
See this other story. A cow imported that was let loose at the cargo airport in Lagos. 250 cows were imported. They were meant for a dairy farm in Ekiti. Unfortunately, one of the cages meant for the cow got broken and the cow got loose. It started chasing the airport workers, but luckily they were able to overcome it. It is meant to for a dairy farm in Ekiti State.
All right. We hope that the cows, of course, will go through the normal health facilities and the vet services before they get introduced to the market. Into the dairy farm. Bayo Tebe, we'd like to appreciate you for being around. Enjoy your weekend and see you on Monday.
See you on Monday, God willing.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing how to more effectively implement the Safe Schools initiative through appropriate and adequate financing.
The Muslim Ummah are cordially invited to the 15th NTA, FRCN and Voice of Nigeria Ramadan lecture, scheduled for date 24th April 2021, time 9 a.m. inshallah. Topic: Causes and Solutions to Nigerian Security Challenges, the Islamic Perspective. Guest lecturer, Sheikh Dr. Jabir Sani Mehula, Head of Department, Arabic and Islamic Studies, Sokoto State University, Sokoto. The venue for the event is Lumana Multipurpose Center, River Close, off Jabi Road East, of Sultan Road, Kaduna. Chairman of the occasion, His Royal Highness Ambassador Ahmed Nuhu Bamali, Emir of Zazzau. Special guest of honor, His Excellency Malan Nasir Ahmed Arufai, the Executive Governor, Kaduna State. Hosts Yaqub Ibn Muhammad, Director General NTA, Dr. Mansour Liman, Director General FRCN, Dr. Sita Okechuku, Director General Voice of Nigeria. Announcer, Organizing Committee.
Size. Find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Every day, he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day, he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mum. Phew! That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo, packed with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
As Oni of Ife, as someone who cares about the well-being and safety of our people, it's time for each and every one of us to realize that COVID-19 is real and it has killed millions of people around the world. Scientists have developed this vaccine. The vaccine is safe for everyone and it contains no microchip, nor can it alter our DNA. However, we must continue to stay safe and stay clean, wear face masks, clean our hands on a regular basis, and try as much as possible to avoid a very large crowd and gathering. For those who choose to be vaccinated, it will go a long way in protecting yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19.
Life is a game. We are cool. We are trendy. Energy moves us. Sports is our game, our oxygen. Because with the round leather, we ball, we hustle. All over the land, north and south, we are united in the positive glory. We are encapsulated by HIFL. We live for the game. It's game time. Showing on NTA Network.
Liverpool are still in the hunt for a top four finish as they welcome Newcastle United to Anfield. Will their ambitions be foiled by the visitors? This Saturday, it's Liverpool versus Newcastle United on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 12 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, before we begin our conversation on financing Safe School Initiative, let's listen to this background I put together by correspondent Musa Abubakar.
12-year-old Hamisa Awal and his friends are amongst the long list of out-of-school children in Nigeria. A problem made worse with abductions of school children, insecurity, and now COVID-19 pandemic. Consequently, an estimated 13 million out-of-school children roam the streets in the country.
Pulling together this compact under your leadership.
This gathering of policymakers and implementers are, however, seeking to change all these. More financing and multi-sectorial strategies to implement Safe School Declaration in a bid to make schools safe for children to return to and build confidence in the education system. Top discussions here.
We have all committed today through a compact that will invest more in education to be able to provide our children the right type of education in the right, secure and safe environment.
At the Nigerian Governors Forum, we are committed to working with other partners to ensure that we keep our schools safe.
Investment in our schools, investment in our education is actually an investment in security and defense.
Cross-sectorial working group will take recommendations and actions forward at the end of the deliberations.
All right, well, thank you for staying with us. And I would like to thank Musa for that background report. Now, let me begin by introducing guests who are already seated here in the studio. And first, I'd like to welcome Chukwuemeka Nwajuba. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba is the Minister of State for Education. Thank you, sir, for coming here.
Good morning, Nigerians, and good morning, everyone.
All right, also with us in the studio here is Asue Igodalo, Chairman, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He is the Chairman, Sterling Bank, and Director, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NTA. It's a pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and we also have Mariam Uwais. Mariam Uwais is Special Advisor to the President on Social Investments. Madam, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, Kinsley.
All right, a pleasure to have you three guests with us this morning. We hopefully will be joined by one or two governors via Zoom in the course of today's conversation. But let's begin straight away with the guests that we have with us here in the Abuja studios. First, the Honourable Minister of State for Education, Dr. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba. Honourable Minister, tell us, I mean, just by way of a reminder, we know that after the abductions in Chibok in 2014, there was a rave about making the school environment safe and secure so that the ends of education are not defeated by the terrorists. But after that, there appears to have been a lull, which of course is the immediate background to the meeting that was held on Tuesday this week. But what is the Safe School Initiative all about, and how come 7 years later it appears not to have gained much traction?
Well, thank you very much, Yesley. As you are aware, the Safe School Initiative was conceived after the Chibok kidnap, and Nigeria proceeded to utilize the funds that were raised at the time to do exactly what the fund at the time was intended for. We felt that some schools were not safe, and there was a need to move some of the students around. After Chibok, there was Buni Yaji, and that's caused a lot of consternation around the area. So what we did, we relocated all the students around the 43 federal government colleges in the north of the country, and that money was used in, actually paying their fees, getting them up to, and they've transited for over 6 years. Most of them who were in JS1 at the time probably are just exiting, as you may imagine. So the funds were used. The challenges at the time were novel, but they've evolved. security threat around the country has also taken some different sort of shape. Then there was a concentration in the northeast, occasioned primarily by Boko Haram and their own style of insurgents. It has escalated somewhat because it morphed. The security threat had then moved from just the northeast, and now we have them in the northwest, some parts of the northwest. Now we're dealing with banditry that will not necessarily Boko Haram. There might be elements that are mixed in them, but now there is no longer just targeted kidnapping. There's this mass abduction, and then the street, we're looking at it. So I'm sure when you will hear from governors specifically for their, because we are asking governors to do threat analysis for each of the schools, depending on the kind of school they are. We found out that the mass abductions are concentrated mainly around secondary schools for people who are within an age bracket for which there is some ransom value, most especially girls, because they put a lot of more pressure on the society if they are girls, and the value of kidnapped value is also higher. So the security apparatus in the country is looking at it holistically. So while the Safe School Initiative was conceived first to react to what was at the time an intermittent abduction of key students, and we felt that looking at the school environment, some were not fenced, some were not adequately manned, that the right thing to do at the time was to relocate them, put money behind making sure that students were then going to school, transporting from far distances, relocating them to places where we thought were safer. That had been contained. That money was judiciously used. The Ministry of Education oversaw that and made sure that it was gone. What this is a response to the escalation. Because while that fund seemed to go into hibernation, what has happened since then is that there's an occasioned escalation which has now evolved a new approach to financing it. And that is what the Ministry of Finance convened all stakeholders, the security agencies, because it's not just longer an educational issue. It is now a wider societal issue in the sense that if the society itself is not safe, then it's impossible to get just one micro school to be safe within that unsafe climate. And that is why the Economic Summit Group, I believe, have been invited to please help with not just examining how much money everybody needs to do this, but also examining some of the technical content around what needs to be done. Because it's not just enough to throw money at it. They also need to see what technologies that are available. We are looking at this, like you will see, as a social response within the country, but it's a bit larger than that because it has a wider economic implication, as they will speak to, and the governors may also explain. So that's what the convergence of what happened and what we are now. That's where we are.
Yes, Honourable Minister of State is still with you. You know, when we talk about a safe school, as rightly pointed out, there are so many issues involved. The ones you mentioned with respect to relocating students of federal secondary schools to safer schools is one. Then there are state schools. There are also private schools that are also in that part of the country. Now, we are looking at this from the point of view of really the geography of a school. How can it be protected? Apart from the ones we mentioned, which is, of course, realistic, as you mentioned, in terms of the money that we are made available to do that, this time around it has escalated. And what we'll find in this country today is abduction, you know. And in terms of abduction, many students are involved in that. And because there's no particular protection of the environment, the bandits have their way. So is there any operational framework that have been put in place by this administration, you know, to ensure that the schools, even the schools where you have, you know, converged others to, are protected?
Well, again, thank you. And I'm sure when the rest of people speak, you'll hear from part of what the summit did in the one day was to analyze this. Governors had already sat. They're all state-specific. Overall, as a country, we have nearly 153,000 primary schools around the country. The country is a huge country, geospatially. In some areas, they are more spaciously located, like in Niger State, for instance. It's a very huge state, and some are very, very far from each other. In some states, they are compact. Lagos State, for instance. So all of that states, they are going to be specific. The main thing we found out with most of them, originally schools weren't conceived as fenced-in places. They were supposed to be a place of joy and place an open place. So the idea of fencing them, especially in the north, where some of the schools are pretty large, weren't conceived. So those are the new responses that states are going. In places like Sokoto, for instance, they've already gone ahead and started fencing schools. So those are specific responses. But like I did point out, we have in Nigeria today what we call Grade 3. Grade 3 is domiciled at the Ministry of Planning. It is a geo-reference network that then, in conjunction with UBEC, because when UBEC did the national audit of schools, whether our nearly 28,000 secondary schools, which are the most at threat, some of them, like you pointed out, are not federal government colleges. Federal government colleges are only 110. The rest belong to religious bodies, state governments, and private individuals. So the ownership structure is a bit varied. However, we do require that all of us examine each of them in the context of what makes that school safe. For us at the Ministry of Education, there are 4 ambits to being safe. Safe in the classroom. The child, what is he learning? What is he doing? What is it available to him? What is it available that he can do? The school environment. Who comes into the school environment? What's the quality of the teacher? The people who work there? Are they people who can be trusted? Are they people who you can work with? The immediate outside environment, which is what governs who interacts with the school, the parent, those who mix with it. And then finally, the larger society, which is where everything else crops out from. So in examining a safe school environment and making it conducive for learning, all of these interact. If you don't have qualified teachers, for instance, that school is still unsafe. If you don't have people who are actually responsible in the environment, their school is unsafe. If you don't have boots on the ground, security men, people who work there, those who report, children are children. And at most times, and oftentimes, I just came back from Kefi last night, where fire gutted a school compound because electrical wiring was faulty. That's an unsafe environment. We lost a girl, and we've been almost crying over that. But everything needs to come together to be a safe place. And that is what this challenge actually is about. And the work that we're doing is all state governors have agreed. They are doing school-specific analysis. And for Kaduna State, when he gave a report on the 500 secondary schools in the place, those who do not have fences, those who do not have adequate facilities, those who do not have men on ground, the Nigerian Civil Defense, through the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Interior presented a graphic of almost the 17,000 schools that are already manned by civil defense, and those 62,000 others that do not have the presence. All of that is available. The security conundrum over the country, the Chief of Defense Staff was also available at the place, and we spoke, and we understand what needs to be done across the country, what the funding and the gaps that are then needed to stem that will be the area of our big boys, those who have the money.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister of State for Education. We're not bringing in Mr. Aswa Ighodalo just yet. Let's talk around the issues so that we would know how much it's likely to cost us, and then he will tell us whether that's a realistic objective to pursue. Their pockets are usually very deep, but they're also very conservative because they have to be sure what they are spending money on. Earlier, we indicated that we'll be joined by 1 or 2 governors for this conversation. We understand our Zoom connection to the governor of Kaduna State is okay now. You can see him there on the right side of your screen. His Excellency Nasiru El-Rufai. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, Nigerians. I'm happy to be here.
All right. I believe this is the first time we're having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Kieran, I believe so.
Yeah, but actually,
right. Yeah,
we're just happy to have you
that's right.
as our guest.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure having you. But on the Safe School initiative, which of course, following from the explanation by the Honourable Minister of State, is now much more elaborate than was earlier conceived for the Northeast. Give us a sense of your understanding of the scope of the current look at the safe school idea on the heels, of course, of what has been happening, and your state, unfortunately, has been heavily impacted by the activities of these bandits and kidnappers for ransom.
Yes, well, initially the Safe School initiative was targeted at protecting schools in the Northeast because of the activities of Boko Haram. Unfortunately, the problem of abduction of students is now more of a Northwestern and North Central phenomenon. And the most states affected are Zamfara, Katsina, Kaduna, and Niger. I think the initiative is still relevant. I think it needs to be revived and applied across Northwest and North Central, in addition to the Northeast. We've had cases of abductions here in Kaduna State. The new phenomenon now is the abduction of nurses and medical personnel, ostensibly to treat bandits that have been wounded. 2 days ago, one of our rural hospitals was attacked and 2 nurses were abducted. So we need to look at not just safe schools, but also safe primary health centers, because we have many of these in rural areas, and they are now increasingly being targeted by the bandits. In Kaduna State, we have about 500 schools. We mapped them on their levels of vulnerability and identified about 40 that we thought were vulnerable. We closed down some. We closed down, I think, about 10, and redistributed the students into safer schools. And so far, none of our students in any of these protected schools have been abducted. But there are other schools that are vulnerable. A private university was attacked a few days ago here in our state. And many of the private schools that we mapped, we considered them unsafe. We advised them to close down. Some did, some said they had special security arrangements. But I think we need this initiative more now than ever. Most of our schools, I said, are not fenced. Basic things like fencing to protect the students from easy access by the bandits is a problem. We need more security men. We need to have soldiers that can respond within 30 minutes of any threat. So I think this is what we need to recalibrate the Safe School initiatives to take into account these emerging threats and the new modus operandi of these terrorists. Thank you.
All right, Your Excellency, let's still remain with you. When we talk about the Safe School initiative, the Honourable Minister of State for Education highlighted, most of the areas that require to be safe before you can say that the school is fully safe. But one thing that is very important is the aspect of financing, right, which of course has become very, very critical. Now, how are you financing or sourcing finance, for the Safe School initiative for Kaduna State, for instance? As Kinsley mentioned earlier, unfortunately, Kaduna has been hit, for some time now, by kidnappers and, of course, bandits. And again, what are you discussing with other governors in that part of the country with respect to a collective financing of Safe School initiative in that area?
Well, look, finance is a major problem. In Kaduna State, we have been using our budget to implement these safety measures. It has been very burdensome on us. We've had to cut back on other things, like building more classrooms and so on. We have to first make the school safe because we can build more classrooms. Indeed, there are parts of Kaduna State, like Birnungwari local government, where we've awarded contracts for the construction of more classrooms and hostels, and the contractors cannot mobilize because the entire area is considered unsafe. So I agree with the minister, the schools cannot be safe if the rest of the country is not safe. But in the case of schools and students, because of their specific vulnerability, we've had to take extraordinary measures. So how are we financing this in Kaduna State? We are relying on our budget. our revenues from the federal government, the federation account allocations, as well as our internally generated revenue, which unfortunately, because of the situation that we are facing, have been going down. So, we need help. We have met as Northwest governors. Even yesterday, we met as Northwest and North Central governors with the president to put these issues on the table of the need to secure our schools and public facilities in our region from the bandits, as well as, solve the problem holistically, not just protecting schools, but protecting entire communities and the entire society. We need help. We need private sector support. We need interventions from bilateral and multilateral partners because we cannot do it alone. Kaduna State has 500 secondary schools. We have over 4,000 primary schools, and all these are vulnerable. We have 1,068 primary health centers. Most of them are in rural areas. They are vulnerable. We have 46,000 square kilometers of land mass, and about a third of that has been the target of bandits. So it's a large-scale problem, and it can only be solved with partnership and collaborations, as well as thinking through and bringing up innovative solutions to this emerging problem.
Let me just ask you this one question before we bring in the other guests again. Your Excellency, Governor of Kaduna State. What is your conception, or if there is a group think around this, what is the conception of the Safe School Initiative, and therefore, what are the priority items? Is it essentially one of physical security? Because I heard the Minister of State also raise the issue of qualified teachers. How that gets into the mix is something that I will ask him to explain. But what is your conception of it? Is it physical security, which on its own is elaborate enough, or does it admit of other priority items? And if so, what are they?
Well, look, I think the major problem now is physical security, okay? Of course, having quality teachers is important, but I think that is a second level problem that the state governments can solve. We have solved it in Kaduna. We administered competency tests to teachers, and we fired 22,000 of them and replaced them with 25,000 new qualified teachers. That can be done by the states. It doesn't require any special intervention of the federal government or private sector partners or the international community. It requires political will. It requires a decision to put the interests of pupils ahead of the interest of politicians and other self-seeking groups. In our view, here in Kaduna at least, for most of the Northwest, the Safe Schools Initiative should address at least three issues. Okay, the first is to ensure that schools are fenced. Schools are physically safe, because unless you fence schools, you give easy access to criminals. Unless you fence schools, you lose land to encroachers. So fencing schools is very, very important, and that is a budgetary item. It's a simple thing to do. You can fence schools, but you need money to do so, and schools occupy large expanses of land, particularly here in the north, where we have large amounts of land, and we take large amounts of land because we project future growth of the need of these schools. Okay, so that's one. The second is to have enough boots on the ground, security in the school. We must have more civil defense, more private security guards, more vigilance service people in the school. We should have many people in the schools. We should have watchtowers in schools built so that any threat approaching can be seen in good time so that you can call for help. The third component is to look at schools and ensure that they are located not further than 30 minutes from a military installation. Because what we are facing with these bandits is beyond the capacity of civil defense or the police to deal with. We need the Army, you need the Air Force, you need the Navy Special Forces close by. And we have looked at the patterns of abductions in Katsina and Zamfara, and we have come to the conclusion, along with the armed forces, that if the Army or the Air Force Special Forces or the Navy Special Forces can get to a location of a school within 30 minutes, the abductions can be foiled. Okay? They need to get there 30 minutes from the first time the school calls and says you are being attacked. If they can get there within 30 minutes, often you can foil the abduction. So we need to ensure that there are forward operating bases or detachments of the Army or the Air Force Special Forces or the Navy Special Forces within 30 minutes of every major school. If we're able to achieve these three, we'll be able to put a cap on the success of the bandits in kidnapping our students. And then the other softer issues can be addressed, I think.
All right. From what he has explained, if we should have, military bases, perhaps 30 minutes before you get to a particular school, it means that Kaduna, for instance, that has 500 secondary schools and 4,000 primary schools. One wonders, the possibility of having the number of military personnel, that would be.
Let me correct this impression, okay? Another thing that we have noticed is that these bandits attack rural schools, okay? They do not come into urban locations and attack because they can't get out. So they attack rural schools. They often operate at night, and they prefer boarding schools. So that significantly reduces the number of schools you have to protect. And in most of the urban areas, you don't have to bother. It is the rural areas that are more at risk. I know that we have cases like the Federal College of Mechanization, which is within the Kaduna metropolis, but a little bit detached away, on the way to the airport, that was attacked. We didn't even consider that an unsafe school, frankly. But the number of bases that you need are not that many, because the focus is to situate the bases within 30 minutes of a cluster of rural schools, and that can be done. It can be done. In the case of Kaduna State, we have been able to more or less achieve that. We have not been able to have, the bandits have not succeeded in abducting any students from any of our secondary schools, because we have done this mapping and we've placed the security agencies there. But the problem with this banditry is that it evolves. For instance, we did not think that primary health centers are also at risk. But 2 days ago, one of our primary health centers was attacked and 2 nurses were abducted. We are still trying to understand the pattern of that and craft an appropriate response. But I think it's important to make this explanation so that the problem does not appear overwhelming. It is not. It can be done.
Thank you, the Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai. We'll get back to you in the course of the conversation. Now we are back to the studio here, where we have Asue Iwodalo and others. Asue Iwodalo is the chairman, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He's also chairman, Sterling Bank, and director, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. Sir, finance is critical to the successful implementation of a Safe School initiative. And what should be the role of the banking sector in this? And how does this role, impact on this initiative? And what should be the methodology of, accessing funds, from the banking sector to, of course, implement the Safe School initiative?
Thank you very much. Let's limit it to the banking sector. Let's look at all sectors. Let's look at the private sector. Let's look at international donors. Let's look at NGOs and civil society and even the ordinary man. I think everybody should contribute to this initiative. It's a major problem in the country, this issue of safe schools and security nationwide. So I think it's something that everybody, so we shouldn't limit it to the banks or to just the private sector. We should encourage all contributors to a fund of financing safe schools. And we heard the Honourable Minister and the Governor speak about the initiatives and what financing is required for as regards keeping our schools safe and keeping our students safe. So, but I think the critical thing is to have a structure that's transparent and trusted, and an appropriation process that's transparent. So if we all know that we have a structure for gathering and keeping funds that's transparent, we know how the money is kept, we know how the money will be spent, and we know those in charge of the money, it's easier for you to encourage people to contribute into a fund that will then subvent and support budgetary allocations that government is providing. So that's the key thing. I think everybody, not just the private sector or the banks, will feel very comfortable when they know that they're contributing to something and that money will be used for what they contributed it for. So that's key. So for us, it's the structure. Some states have, for instance, set up special security trust funds. I know that Lagos State has one, headed by a private sector person. Edo State has one, and a few other states. And they've created a structure which is like a fund and a board. And members of the board are people trusted who have pedigree, and it's easy for them to attract third-party funding. And that money is then appropriated for specific purposes, buying equipment, buying vehicles, securing and providing technology for security. So people know how the money is spent, people know how the money is kept, and there's an accounting process
Should there be a central structure or different structures, perhaps state by state? You know, because to deal with this, of course, you talked about sincerity of purpose and ensuring that there's accountability. Would you prefer to have a central structure, perhaps a federal structure for this purpose?
You know, because of donor fatigue, you know, there are many pressures on people's resources. Particularly, we've had the COVID, we've had COVID, we've had floods, we had different things. Because of donor fatigue, I'd suggest that we have a global, like a federal structure that then intervenes, because it's not every state that has the same peculiar problems. There are certain areas that are more affected than others. And so we would probably have a federal structure, and we would, with the collaboration of Finance Ministry, Education Ministry, Security Services, identify the areas that require the most support, and then channel those funds to those areas. Bringing in technology, and it's not just funding that the private sector can bring. I was talking to Mrs. Uweza, the Honourable Minister, before we started the program, and there are different areas. There's technology, encouraging investments in technology by many companies. Recently, I heard about a company in Ibadan that's developing drones that are that can read carbon emissions. So if those drones fly over forests, they know that there's a lot more there are a lot more humans in this forest than should be, you know. So they can easily program, identify, and then tell security centers that there's something happening here that's unusual. So there's also encouraging research, you know, encouraging technology, supporting schools by training teachers, and encouraging the training of teachers. So there are different ramifications to this, and there are different ramifications to safe schools. But straight to your question, I think if we have a center, well-administered center, that's concentrating on looking at the areas that need the most support, and then targeting support to those areas, I think that will work better. And that will ensure and concentrate donors into one area, and we don't have multi points for donating, which also affects and irritates the private sector sometimes, you know. So it's key to have one source, you know. Yeah.
All right, that's why you would. Thank you very much there. It's made the point that financing or contribution towards financing the Safe School Initiative could be in cash or in kind. We will drill into some of those aspects subsequently in the course of the conversation. Let's now bring in the Special Advisor to the President on Social Investment, Mrs. Miriam Uwais. Mrs. Uwais, you've listened to the other contributors. This is one area that you've also had to handle. Tell us what the experience has been in terms of just trying to get around the Safe School Initiative, making a success of it, and now the existential challenges that we are facing with the ascendancy of all the bandits and kidnappers?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the fact that this has finally, or is being reinvigorated, because it's really critical that we address the issues that have been emerging and evolving over time. I think one of the issues that we seem to not have focused on is the mental health of the children and the parents, the communities. It's very important for us to also deploy psychologists and counselors to try and engage the parents and the communities and also the children themselves, because there's been a huge there's been an impact on the mental health of many of the parents. They would rather their children not go to school at all, which has dire consequences, especially in the areas where, I mean, if you look at where the banditry and the abductions have been happening, is already very bad in terms of the school attendance and the school completion rates. I think the Ministry of Health should also be a part of this conversation so that we're able to get also the softer areas addressed. We should also look at the drills, alarms, lighting. There are a number of things that the security agencies can do in terms of engaging the communities to know what the early warning signals are. And also to be able to, if at all this happens, to be able to track those children just in case they're taken away. So we'll need a lot of technology, as Mr. Ighodalo has said. We need maybe chips inserted in maybe wristbands or badges. There's a lot that can be done for our children, and especially in encouraging them. And also the fallback plan, of course, is how do we get learning to the children if the parents actually resist that their children should go to school? We can engage in a lot of campaigns and advocacy, but at the end of the day, I mean, even if it's happened before in the 60s, compelling parents penalizing parents whose children are not in school, that happened. I'm really worried that this is going to happen again, because it's only common sense that if you feel your child is a sitting target, it may be difficult to convince you. So how do we get learning to the homes in a situation where we have a dearth of the internet in certain places, especially in these rural areas, and especially where their parents are not literate, so they're not able to engage them in classes, even on the radio. I think these are larger questions that I think the Federal Ministry of Education and the state ministries of education should be able to engage with, because we always must think about the plan B. And I must commend the governor of Kaduna State and the Governors Forum for what steps have been taken so far. It's very important, especially in a country that's a federation, with every state having its own autonomy, prioritizing what it feels is priority for them. It's important to have a minimum standard framework across the states so that we're able to share the learnings and the opportunities across board, and to see how each state can actually ensure that there's schools, the schools within their vicinity, and not just the state schools, but also school proprietors, private school proprietors, the schools that are owned by faith-based organizations. They all need to be brought onto the same platform so that they are able to address these challenges as they emerge. You know, I've listened to it being boarding schools, secondary schools, now primary healthcare centers. What next? We need to be a bit more proactive about where else this can happen, and continue to engage with how to provide security across so many other factors. And so it comes down to really security around the country.
All right, madam. You're an advisor to the president on social investments, and one way or another, this issue falls under your purview. We're talking about investment here. And Mr. Odalo talked about the way and the method of raising funds for the implementation of this Safe School initiative. What should be the role of your office in this direction? Are you expanding your horizon or your tentacles, towards ensuring that persons or group of persons, or organizations or agencies of government could invest in this initiative?
What happened in 2014 was that a group of funders got together, including Gordon Brown, Their World, and they engaged the then Minister of Finance and Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. And they set up this fund, and they disbursed the funds, as the Honourable Minister of State for Education has said, in a very efficient manner, and they targeted the issues that were then the challenge. Now it's much broader, and it is the same Minister of Finance that has convened this meeting, and she's putting together a technical committee and board advisors to help her ensure that there's a policy behind the funding, or the funding behind the policy, I should say. Because without a document that actually sets out a framework of how these funds will be disbursed, what should be prioritized, how, and all of that, it won't be, and it should be a very inclusive, all the stakeholders should be brought together. Without that, the funding is really neither here nor there. I think we need to have this policy document, which is what the convening was about, how to start setting up this policy document that will direct or provide the guidelines on how the funds will be disbursed. So it's not my office, it's the Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning that's actually handling this mandate. I'm just supporting her.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Miriam Owais. Again, we'll come back to you later on in the course of the conversation. We are being joined now via Zoom by the Governor of Sokoto State, His Excellency Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. Your Excellency, a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria for this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Let's begin by getting your perspective on what the Safe School Initiative entails with regard to Sokoto State.
Well, thank you very much once again, and I must once again thank the Honourable Minister of Finance and other stakeholders for convening the conversation and discussions on this very and all important issue of safe and secure school environment for our children in Nigeria, especially given the times that we are in now, whereby the challenge of kidnapping and abduction of children, particularly school children, is on the increase in our country. In Sokoto State, we have not had any such an incident so far. We pray we shouldn't have. But given the experiences of our neighbors and other parts of the country, we have been taking measures to ensure that for studies, and we've been proactive in ensuring that we merge most of the boarding schools and left only those in the capital that are now having students in boarding houses. But we have raised the level of awareness even in schools whereby, in environments whereby we have day schools, and we have engaged community leaders in this initiative of ensuring that schools are safe and secure for learning. You can see clearly that the motive of these criminal elements is to disrupt school learning process in our country, and in particular in the Northwest, where we're witnessing this trend. And we must do everything humanly possible to arrest this situation. It is important as having schools, as important as having teachers,
Well, we are having audio challenge along the line of communication there with the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. When the line gets better, we'll certainly return to him for further explanations. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We take a short break now. When we return, the conversation continues. Do stay with us.
My name is Boss Mustafa, the Secretary to the Government and the Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. I've just had the rare privilege of taking my first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and I can tell you that we are doing very well in terms of our response and the administration of the vaccines all over the country. As strategic leaders, we are supposed to lead by example, and the President did precisely that on Saturday with the Vice President. And we are continuing in that particular direction. The essence of taking these vaccines is to help us really fight this COVID-19 virus. And the combination of the non-pharmaceutical measures and the vaccine is the way to go in 2021 and thereafter.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Caplets for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Caplets. This has been Medifact for Panadol.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire. Teacher jọ̀wọ́, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher jọ̀wọ́, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ.
The premiere of the new season of The Village Headmaster, initially scheduled for the second quarter of 2021, has now been postponed till further notice. We apologize for this short notice and promise to keep our viewers and advertisers informed as soon as we have a new date.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders. We are trying to shout.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
Liverpool are still in the hunt for a top 4 finish as they welcome Newcastle United to Anfield. Will their ambitions be foiled by the visitors? This Saturday, it's Liverpool versus Newcastle United on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 12 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, you're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We, of course, lost the signals to the Sokoto State Governor. I think his bandwidth issues affected his connection to us. Once our engineers are able to sort that out, we'll bring him back into the conversation. Let's now bring in again the Honourable Minister of State for Education, Dr. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba. I'm sure that a number of stakeholders are clear on this, what I'm about to say. We are not starting at ground zero with regard to the Safe School initiative. Now, listening to some of the steps already taken by Kaduna State, what the governor has done is to indicate that, look, some of the necessaries to ensuring safe school initiatives are matters within the competence of state governments. And he has taken some steps. But he says that the problem is huge, and therefore there is need for contribution. And the story is not necessarily uniform throughout the country or even throughout the most heavily impacted states in the north. But in addition to that, the point about not starting from ground zero is as follows. We already have intervention mechanisms. There is UBEC, for instance. And then, of course, the states have their aligned budgets for education. You have SUBEB. In some states, and I'm sure you are familiar with this, education is often seen as a gold mine. Is it possible in all of this to tweak, without running afoul of the enabling enactments, to say, look, for purposes of what we intend to do, perhaps the kind of intervention that UBEC could do will be in XYZ direction? You can take example, for instance, from TED Fund. You can see TED Fund has been intervening in infrastructure in institutions of higher learning. Infrastructure isn't just a lecture theatre. It could also involve fencing or other activities. So that, as Mr. Aswe Igodalo said, there isn't too much expectation from the private sector or other NGOs or other donors, and they don't get fatigued. Is this something that you may wish to speak on?
Well, thank you. And you've heard what most commentators already said. But look at how we refocus this. You did point out this exists. There's been a framework. That framework addressed what it was meant and conceived for at the time. We have a larger situation now that has evolved. And we think that the Ministry of Finance is correct in convening or reconvening the actors in the field. We've now then extrapolated from that conveyance. What everybody then arrived at was to say, these are the things that will be needed. These are the challenges that are peculiar, and these are the challenges that are general. The police has specified that the issue of security is not necessarily a state-based matter, or whether you give control to state governors or not, but to the community, at where these things are. They want a community policed, community response, community affected, community deployed members of the public, so that there is complete interface at the point where the schools are, or wherever installation may be, whether they be health installations, whether they be federal institutions or not. But it is located somewhere. And there has to be an aggregation of all the forces that are amassed in that area towards the safety of that institution. And we agree with that. We also agree that this police on its own, the military on their own, or even in their combined strength, are still grossly inadequate because of the huge nature of our country. Now, I don't want to delve into the security architecture of the country, and that's a broader area, and there are specialists in that field. And we've heard from the CDS, we've heard from the IGP of police, we've heard from the civil defense, we've heard. Now the country is challenged at the moment from different fronts, whether they be people trying to free prisoners, yesterday the riots in Kanu, or anywhere. There are lots of challenges at every time. But we need to concentrate on what it is that we are looking at. These abductions, threats to learning, those who encroach upon the learning space. And this is what the special advisor to the president just pointed out, that it is not just only physical. Physical is important because that is what is happening now, and we need to address them. And the governor of Kaduna State has given the steps around those physical infrastructure. Secure them physically, have men on the ground to do that. Yeah, and in a country like Nigeria, you can use that to solve a couple of problems that can be solved with that. Myself and the Minister of Interior, we've already discussed about 1.2 million Nigerians, for instance, asked to be employed in civil defense. If we take 300,000 of those alone, we'll be solving half of the Nigerian unemployment problem and moving them to schools, for instance, at 12 in each of our 22,000 schools. We would have solved some problems. That convergence needs to happen.
I'm not quite sure, but that's one aspect of the question that we may have overlooked. That has to do with the UBEC's intervention. Is there any need for UBEC to intervene?
I'm coming to that. I'll get to that.
Because we're running short of time.
Okay, so you're looking at what it is that needs to be done, and then going to how do you then do it? Now, once you've articulated all of these and the things that the responses, you see the federal government overlook it. They shouldn't be done in silos. Each one is talking to the other. If we need boots on the ground, that's not a responsibility for UBEC or anybody. You need civil defense or police doing that. Now, how do you fund that? Which is what the structure that the Ministry of Finance is setting up at the moment. She wants to set up a template that this is where the contribution, like he pointed out, a structure that this is what we can, when the funds are gathered, this is what they will be spent for. There's some sort of transparency. The way we work, some of us who've been in the private sector before came here, is actually, we need some transparency as to collation, use, and appropriation. Those need to be clear. Then you now ask for the agencies that can then intervene and what the ambits of their powers are. In the UBEC Act, we everything that she spoke to about even criminalizing not going to school, we already have them in the UBEC Act. In the days of the National Assembly in 1999, we did the UBEC Act, and in 2004 it was signed. We said it should be criminal for you not to bring your children to school, and we can arrest you. But we found out that we don't even have enough jails for that anyway. So let's just move on to what is possible. And like you pointed out, in my days as chairman of TED Fund, we tweaked the law a little. My background is law, and we understand the stretches that you can make of this. What we have powers to do, in the case of tertiary education, we could alter them a little bit and ask this, because that's what the law allows. In the case of UBEC, you can't stretch them. There's a funding mechanism. The governors are at the moment saying, just give us the fund, let's just do what we have. No, the law says there has to be a counterpart funding. And that counterpart funding has been at the head of the struggle. Now, you can't unilaterally, at the Ministry of Education, because we supervise UBEC, hardly, UBEC is the commission. The Ministry of Education does not unilaterally interfere how they work. We have to also be guided by the law, because that's what governs the country, the enforcement of its laws. However, the UBEC can agree at its board to make some arrangements that can then support what it is that the Ministry of Finance is structuring. And then it becomes a pool where all of us then look at exactly if there's a contribution, it is a contributory structure that the chairman of the NSDG has pointed out. If that structure exists, then we can make appropriations to, let's say, Sokoto State, or let's say to Jengebi. Jengebi is at Zamfara State, and it borders very closely to Sokoto State. Sokoto State took some proactive steps, not because the problem happened in Sokoto State, but because Jengebi is at a remote end of their border. Now, Zamfara State, in the 14 local governments in Zamfara State, have to respond differently. The way you respond in Tarata Mafara is not the same way you respond in Gusau State. You move from there, you go westward, and you're headed towards Jigawa State and Kano State. Now, what does that tell you? What do you respond to? And how Kano is vast. How are you going to respond in Kano is not the way you're going to respond in Jigawa State. So those are the things we need to do.
Minister of State for Education, we thank you at this point. We are just running short of time. Of course, you have a very valid point that you are making.
I'm sorry, I have an issue. You want to go to the Kaduna State Governor?
No, I want to bring in Iwodalo.
Before we bring in Iwodalo, there's a point that the Honourable Minister of State made. Let's get some additional practical information from the Kaduna State Governor. I saw him on the screen a while ago. That's right, he's back on the screen. Your Excellency, we were talking about, say, we are not at ground zero. You have a number of funding mechanisms already for education. We are used to special intervention funds in Nigeria. And the question I asked the Honourable Minister is, look, can we, for instance, tweak aspects of UBEC, which requires counterpart funding, so that the states would then also provide their counterpart funding and direct it for the specific purposes under the Safe School Initiative? It appears, if I got him correctly, that his idea is, okay, UBEC can't come in, but it should be under the umbrella of the Safe School financing arrangements under the Ministry of Finance. Now, one hazard with that, and this is one of the implementation challenges that we face in the country, is it may not very well be that Safe School Initiative will have its own bureaucracy, and it would like to have a signature on the projects that it decides to undertake. So it doesn't want Safe School Initiative, you have a stamp. You go elsewhere, you have a stamp. Then your Ministry of Education, your suburb, will have a stamp. And then you have all kinds of things. We have seen it, for instance, with electrification projects in rural areas. A local government will say they are doing one. NDDC say they are doing one. Federal government, rural electrification agency say in the same location. In the end, nobody gets light. How do we get around this, or how can we maximize the current opportunities that we have, Your Excellency?
Well, the minister has explained one of the problems of UBEC. The law specifically requires counterpart funding. You put up an amount and the federal government matches that amount. So the condition precedent for drawing on UBEC funds is that you put up your counterpart funding. And many states are in arrears for some years. They have not put up the funding. So there is a lot of money there in UBEC that is idle. The Governors Forum has been pushing for converting the UBEC funding to something like a program for results, tied to specific targets. You get the money when you achieve certain targets. That will require an amendment to the law. We have to operate within the law or amend it. However, I think what you're proposing, which is to take some of the idle funds in UBEC and put it in a basket of funds for financing safe schools, I think is something that can be explored. We have to look at the law and see whether that is possible to do that. But I think it's something that can be explored. I think there is room for greater collaboration and reduction of duplication of effort in this area. And since the beginning of these abductions and kidnapping, this has become a national emergency. And I think in situations of national emergencies, we should have room for some flexibility. I'm sure if some funding from UBEC can kickstart that trust fund that my brother Aswe Igodalo spoke about, with private sector, board of trustees and partners overseeing the disbursement of the funds for approved projects, I think it will work. I think if the government puts in something, the private sector can come in, and international donors can also come in and create a basket of funds to finance safe schools. I think UBEC can play a role, but again, the devil is in the details of the law. The UBEC law needs to be looked at to give it more flexibility to do that. But definitely it's something worth exploring, and I think many of my colleagues in the Governors Forum are likely to support something like that, particularly for the Northwest, Northeast, and North Central, where this problem of safe schools has become a crisis and an emergency.
All right, we have to pause the Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, to return to the studio and ask Iwodalo what should be your final contribution this morning You suggested the issue of having a central body that could be constituted for the purpose of raising funds, for the financing of this. Who should constitute this central body you're talking about? Is it government agencies or private individuals or who?
Governor Rufai has actually answered that question in his response, but let me just go back. Basically, I think the key is trust. And I think a combination of those who are bringing the money, the private sector, NGOs, donors, the government itself, even the security agencies, all those that have an input and a part to play in determining how to look at this issue of safe schools. So the important thing is to have a structure that is trusted and have a mechanism. We have rules and regulations by which the trust works, which is clear and unambiguous, so that there's no room for any opaqueness. That's the key. So for me, it's a combination of different parties, not just the private sector. And like I said, if you look at the trust fund in the security trust fund in Lagos or Edo State, it's a combination, but it's to have a transparent process. That's the key thing. And, the governor of Kaduna State also was talking about, and I think the Honourable Minister mentioned it, to the issue of the emergency situation we're in. It's great that the Minister of Finance is convening this, because in the private sector, when you look long-term, we don't have kids in schools, we don't have quality education, parents don't let them go to school, then what happens to the skill sets? Who goes into the employment? Who goes into the job sector? How do we employ the people for the jobs that are created? So we have a major national emergency. And, human capital is the greatest component of wealth creation in any country. If we don't deal with this issue of our children going to school, then Nigeria is in big trouble, because our developmental rate will contract very seriously. And if you look down 5-10 years, we already have a problem with education now. Then COVID came on, and then we have this issue of insecurity. So we have a triple whammy. In a situation of a triple whammy, we are headed to contraction and negative development and recession, both in the medium and long term. So we need to deal with this issue. And as one last thing, I think we also, maybe because I was mentioning that to the Chief of Defense Staff when we met on Tuesday, and it's something that it's coming from what some of the governors had said. We need to develop a special force for keeping schools safe. The security agencies have to look at this. Governor Kaduna said something about 30 minutes from each installation, or installations, or military responses, being able to get to where there are problems in 30 minutes. We need to develop a special force for this because of the emergency nature of this. We need to devote, and I mentioned this to the Chief of Defense Staff, and it's something we need to look at, working with technology, working with the private sector. Drones, Mrs. Uwais talked about chips in students. We need to bring everything on board to deal with this national emergency and national problem. I think after insecurity, or at par with insecurity, is this issue of education, making sure we have children in school, making sure that our 13 million out-of-school children come back into school. So it's a fundamental emergency. All hands must be on deck to deal with it, so...
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ighodalo. Mrs. Miriam Uwais, I'll ask you this question, but I would also have loved to ask the Minister of State and Governor Rufai the same question. So let's take a first shot at it. Well, when we have an emergency and funds are available and there are projects to be handled, it becomes sometimes, from our national experience, it becomes a contract bazaar. Schools are going to be fenced. You are going to have contractors who are supplying sand, who are supplying sharp sand, plaster sand, blocks, and cement priced at 4,000 naira a bag now, and so on and so forth. So everybody just gets in there. Some persons would argue, oh, you are creating jobs. But Mr. Ighodalo also talks about skill set. And I recall on Good Morning Nigeria, when we were discussing the kidnap incident in one of the schools, the school had virtually no fence, and it was a science secondary school, government science secondary school. Will it also not be valuable to begin to get some of this hands-on experience, to get some of the students to participate In these activities, Tai Solari did it at Mayflower in the Kenya. Can't we adopt that now? So that by the time a student is leaving school, if it is to set a block, you can do that. How many coaches do you need for a fence? What are your thoughts?
Well, the issue about vocational training and a lot of these skill sets is something that we're trying to focus on, because somehow there's been a depreciation in skill sets across the country. We have many youth and many children that are out of school and have no skills. So one of the things we're doing in our office is to drive what we call the At-Risk Children project. We're engaging states directly to see how we can get them to focus on, set up teams within the state to see how they can engage youth and children who are not in school, to try and encourage them to either go back into school or to share learnings about vocations, agriculture, creativity, to do so much, share learning in a period of 9 months and then exit them and encourage them to work together in clusters or in cooperatives to see that they actually benefit from what they are learning. And a lot of the development partners have engaged, have shown interest and are supporting the ARC-P project to see how, even beyond the issues of the Safe Schools initiative, we have too many youth out there that have nothing to do and who are very easy to call in, to someone to be part of the disruptions and the violence and even the issues of substance abuse. How can we have a concerted focus on these children? So what we're doing is engaging the states. So far we've been to about 5 states. Now we conduct scoping missions to engage the state itself to see what they have on ground, the facilities, the numbers that they have, the stakeholders who are already involved in this, all in a bid to enhance or add value to what the state is doing. And it's very interesting to see how the states themselves are embracing this. And they come up with all kinds of, ideas themselves, because these issues must be driven by the state. It must be state-led because the states themselves have the mandate for children, for primary health care, for empowerment. The federal government can only support what the state is doing. And it's very important for us. In one of the states, they've told us we have a database of undergraduates or graduates who don't have work. We want them to be trained on security as forest rangers. And so even though we don't have the skills in our own office, we have a very lean team. What we're doing is summoning the different skill providers from government and from the international community to see how we can engage these children and ensure that they learn. And we're also looking at sports, developing life skills, civics. There's so much to be done in this country, irrespective of the fact that we actually have these emerging problems. So it's important to keep an eye on everything that's happening rather than just focus on one or two things. And I think it's critical for us to work together as an inclusive set of societies so that we can bring everybody's energy into one space and focus on seeing how we can really get our youth and our children into schools, or at least into productive ventures.
Thank you, Madam. Governor El-Rufai, you could also come in here. We're talking about, should I call it vocational education, for instance, where students or pupils are, given the opportunity of learning one skill or the other while in school. Is that a possibility?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you repeat? I didn't quite hear you.
All right. We're talking about engaging students, for instance, in some vocational skills, that they could acquire while in school, so that when they leave school, they could have skills, to sustain them, before perhaps they get into higher school or something. The idea here is to ensure that the students get skills while in school. Is it a possibility in all the schools, or, in your state, for instance?
Of course, it is a possibility. In fact, the Kaduna State government just approved a new education policy that requires every student that passes through our school system up to secondary school to have, in addition to his WAEC and NECO certificate, 1 or 2 skills, just to supplement. Because today, in today's world, education alone without skills is probably inadequate. This is what we see very clearly going around in the world, particularly digital skills. So it's part of our education policy. And it is possible. And in fact, in Kaduna State, we have schools that the students produce their own furniture, the technical schools. We have some technical schools that have the carpentry equipment and laboratories and so on, and they produce this. But it is not in every school that you have teachers that can teach bricklaying, that can teach carpentry and so on and so forth. It's not in every school. So yes, it is possible to do it, particularly in the technical schools. It is also possible to add this to the curriculum, as we have decided to do in Kaduna State. In every one of our secondary schools, we are going to add some kind of skills. For the girls, we are going to add skills like, fashion design and hairdressing and so on and so forth, so that they can at least have something to do in addition to their certificate. So it is possible, and it can be planned and implemented, but it cannot be done across the board. The suggestion by one of your uncles that, like Mayflower School, we build a fence and so on, may not work, because in some schools there are no such instructors to teach bricklaying and so on and so forth. But yes, it is possible. It can be explored. It's not difficult to work on. And over time, I think it may even have accrued benefits, not only to the society, but to the students and to the school.
Okay, Your Excellency, thank you very much. On that last point, you were saying that you don't have, there may be no qualified instructors for that. The trick will be employ them, and I'm sure they will deliver. I'm sure you can organize interviews for them, such as we saw recently you were organizing screening sessions for aspirant chairmen to local governments in your state. We'd like to appreciate you, Governor Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State, for your contribution to our conversation this morning on the Safe School Initiative. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, and here with us in the studios, our deep appreciation also to Mr. Aswe Ihodalo, who is chairman of NESG, that's the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He also chairs the board of Sterling Bank and a director of the Sovereign Investment Authority. Thanks a lot for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being with you, Kingsley and Kieran. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. And our appreciation also to Mrs. Miriam Uwe, Special Advisor to the President on Social Investment. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And our deep thanks to Dr. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, Honourable Minister of State for Education. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you very much. NTA, I'm not a doctor. I'm a PhD holder. I don't ask the doctor. So
no, that's Doctor of Philosophy. I'm not saying you are a physician.
Ordinary minister.
He has a doctorate in law from the University of Jos. All right. We also would like to thank the governor of Sokoto State. Unfortunately, we couldn't have him for a long time. Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. He was with us via Zoom from Sokoto. Thanks a lot for your time and for participating. Best wishes. So that's it for us today, and indeed for the week on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy your weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Have a great weekend.